Okay, so today's the 28th of August, 2016. We're going to continue with the book of Ezekiel. We left off in chapter 37 where it starts talking, remember he was talking about the dry bones. And in verse 15, I want us to go to Ezekiel verse 15, chapter 37. Ezekiel 37. From verse 15 forward, remember he was speaking about the dry bones, and the dry bones had to do with the people of Israel. And we had mentioned that prophecy, the way the prophets are written, is prophecy for a past, for present, and for future, so that all generations can relate to what has been spoken. Because remember, Ezekiel is speaking to the people once they're in Babylon. And so for them, remember, a lot of people died when they were exiled to Babylon, and coming back, a lot of people died, some people stayed. So when he's talking about this army of dead bones coming up into life, it basically now they have the hope of a restoration going back to Israel from Babylon. And so they always the desire of the people of Israel is to come back to the land, and all 12 tribes to be together, because that has to do with the kingdom of Israel and their king, which is Yahweh. So the purpose of bringing back Israel is so there's again a kingdom, and again the king living in their midst with his temple, which is his palace, which is his home. Okay, so let's read chapter 37, verse 15. It says, "The word of Adonai came to me. You, human being, take one stick and write on it for Yehuda and those joined with him among the people of Israel. Next, take another stick and write on it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel who are joined with him." Now, if you go to the Hebrew, the word for stick there is etz. What's etz? Tree. Tree. And I was talking to Mickey and Danny before you guys came that usually the perspective when you read this, if you bring it to our culture and our understanding, what is a stick? A branch or a stick. Okay, but it's talking about an etz, tree. Another thing about tree, what does a tree symbolize?
Human being.
People. It symbolizes people. Nations. What else does a tree represent? Roots. What else does it represent? Fruit. What else does it represent?
Fruits.
Yeah, fruits. Roots and
Israel.
fruits. Represents Israel. Where's the first time we hear about trees?
The Garden of Eden.
The Garden of Eden. So the trees have to do. Trees also represent counsel, shade, protection. So there's a lot of things that a tree can represent. So in this case, Yahweh is telling to Ezekiel, remember Ezekiel's a prophet, and so he has to demonstrate the word of God through actions. And one of the things he says, to take a stick, one for Judah, and one for Ephraim. Okay. Remember that Judah, another name for Judah. Another name for the people of Judah.
Israel.
The Southern Kingdom.
The Southern Kingdom.
Bless you. Thank you.
Another name for Ephraim.
The 10 tribes.
The 10 tribes. What else?
The house of Israel. The house of Israel.
The house of Israel. What else?
Isn't that the lost nation?
The Northern Kingdom.
The Northern Kingdom.
House of Israel.
So basically he's saying take a stick for Judah and a stick for Ephraim, or a tree for Judah and a tree for Ephraim, and to do something with it. It says, next take another stick and write on it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel who are joined with him. Verse 17 of chapter 37. Finally, bring them together into a single stick so that they become one in your hand. When your people ask you what all this means, tell them that Adonai Elohim says this: I will take the stick of Joseph, or the tree of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, together with the tribes of Israel who are joined with him, and put them together with the stick of Jehudah, and make them a single stick, so that they become one in my hand. So the purpose is to demonstrate by doing these two things, putting them together and demonstrating that they are one. And that has to do with one kingdom, one king, one temple. Okay. And it says, verse 21, no, verse 20. The sticks on which you write are to be in your hand as they watch. Then say to them that Adonai Elohim says, I will take the people of Israel from among the nations where they have gone and gather them from every side and bring them back to their own land. So where is he bringing the people of Israel back from? From? Where is he bringing them?
Babylon.
From Babylon, from everywhere. Because remember, Jehudah was sent to Babylon, and the northern kingdom was sent to Assyria, and from there it went to a whole bunch of other nations. And it says, I will make them one nation in the land on the mountains of Israel, and one king will be king for all of them. They will no longer be two nations. So for those people that say there's no such thing as two houses, right here it's talking about two nations, two kingdoms, two houses. I don't think that could be any more plain than that. They will no longer be two nations, and they will never again be divided into two kingdoms. So what's happened? That Israel was divided into two kingdoms. Israel once was one kingdom, and for breaking covenant, during the time of Solomon, Solomon broke covenant. Yahweh broke Israel in two pieces, the same way that they broke covenant. So they were divided, 10 tribes called Northern Kingdom, or the House of Israel, and the Southern Kingdom, which consisted of Judah, some Levites, and Benjamin. Okay, and so they were scattered. Now the thing that I wanted to let you know is, I need a favor. Jonathan, can you do me a favor? In that room, there's a frame that has a stick on this wall. Can you bring that to me? Yeah, glass frame on this room. Just to show you that this is the concept that the Western culture, the Western side of the world has come up with in terms of the two sticks becoming one. Okay? And it's logical to think of that because the translation is stick instead of tree. They translate it as stick. And so this is the concept which everybody, when they talk about the two sticks of one for Judah, one for Ephraim coming together, doing this. Okay. Which I'm not saying is incorrect. I'm not saying it's incorrect, but another perspective is the following. Because remember, he's talking about trees, and trees are made out of what? Wood. Yes.
Any similarity or anything in common that why it's shaped like a Y? Is it symbolic also that it's why like Yahweh or just?
No, it just the branch was like that.
And is it wood personality? Gardening.
It means humans.
Yeah, human.
Yeah, it has to do with people. Another thing I want to, this is again from the Sondervan Illustrated Bible Backgrounds Commentary. It's similar to the IVP, but I really like this one also because it has pictures. Okay, and so I want to read to you their comment on, in reference to the two sticks. It says, the Hebrew word for wood, etz, is translated with luach in the Aramaic Targum. The Targum is an Aramaic translation of the Hebrew Torah. Okay, a Targum is an Aramaic translation of the Hebrew Torah. So when they translated the Hebrew into the Aramaic, instead of calling it etz, like a tree, they called it luach, which means tablet, a tablet. And it says, which is a generic designation for wooden writing board or set of writing boards consisting of two leaves revolving on a hinge. These boards were made of flat pieces of wood on one side covered with beeswax in order to provide a writing surface. So basically, when it mentions in Isaiah 30, verse 8, and in Habakkuk 2, verse 2, it's using the same word. And it says, since Ezekiel is commanded to write a message on each piece of wood concerning Judah and Ephraim, it has been suggested that some such wooden writing boards are being used. In other words, instead of a stick, they would use tablets made of wood to write on, which makes more sense because that was something that was used during that time, during that culture, and he has to write not only the names, but has to write a whole bunch of other stuff about Judah.
What is
And
the
Ephraim.
word that is used in
Luach.
You said Isaiah.
Another verse that has the same terminology is Isaiah 30, verse 8, and Habakkuk 2, verse 2. Remember where the Lord says to Habakkuk to write down the vision?
So that runner can read it while running?
Yeah, so one can. So what they use were
You said Isaiah 30,
verse 8.
verse 8.
So what they used were tablets made of wood. Remember that the commandments were given on what? Written on what? Stone tablets. They were tablets, but those were of stone. And these, what Yahweh's asking Ezekiel to do, is to write that information about Judah and Ephraim, take two leaves of wooden tablets and put them together as one. Almost like a book. Almost like the commandments. Almost like to them that this would have made more sense to do it this way than to do it this way.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not saying this is wrong. All I'm saying that the most logical perspective of that being written by Ezekiel would have been in tablets of wood instead of on branches, because that was known during that time and during that culture. But if you take that out of context, you say two sticks. What do you think? Two sticks, and you make this. Okay, I just wanted to give you that other perspective, because one thing we have to understand when we're studying Torah and the prophets.
This says tablet.
Tablet. That's a more accurate translation. So when he says, so what I was saying is that the word of the Lord, the rabbis who have been studying the Torah for centuries and centuries and centuries, they have understood that there's not one perspective when you read something, contrary to the Western culture where you're told it's a stick, and there's nothing else but a stick. And you put that in a little box and you don't go out of there. It's a stick. The word says it's a stick. That's the translation. The word says etz. And then in the Aramaic it says luach, which is a tablet, which is the most logical thing. I'm not saying one thing is wrong or the other thing is absolutely correct. But what I'm saying, if you bring it into the context of the time, into the context of the prophet and the people living there, it makes more logic that that's what he used. Two tablets of wood, wrote on it, and then put them together to show the people. They would have understood that better than the stick that looks like a slingshot. Okay? So the thing is, by not taking the word into that culture, into that context, you come up with a different idea that if you present it to the Middle Eastern people, to the Jews, they're going to say that's not right. Okay? So that's one thing we have to understand about the Word of God. It's not just one perspective. God is not in a little box.
That's right.
The rabbis say that the Torah has 70 faces.
Wow.
70 faces, and also it has 70 layers. So when you read Genesis, let's say the first chapter, you can just stay in that chapter until you find all 70 layers and all 70 faces.
Wow.
Okay? So that's why there's different perspective to give you a broader idea. Why? Because the word of the Lord is alive. It's life. It keeps growing and growing, and it gives more fruit. And so if you just stick your mind into one thing, you're going to miss a lot of stuff. And that's what has happened with the translations. We focus on one translation, on one definition, on one perspective, and you're missing everything else. That's enriches the word of the Lord. So that's why when you start learning stuff like this, you go like, wow, yes, that's cool. You know, it's because that's the way it should be. We should be in awe of the word of God, huh?
Yes.
It should be.
Yummy like food.
Yeah.
Like this apple pie.
Okay, so he says, going back to Ezekiel 37 verse 23, let's finish that chapter, says, they will never again defile themselves with their idols, their detestable things, or any of their transgressions. But I will save them from all the places where they have been living and sinning. Again, where it says, I will save them, I will rescue them, I will deliver them, I will bring them back.
Amen.
Okay. And it says, in continuing with that verse, and I will cleanse them so that they will be my people, and I will be their Elohim. I will cleanse them. That is temple language. Because to be in the presence of Yahweh, you have to be clean. His kind of cleaning, not what you think is cleaning. So it's temple language. And he says, I will cleanse them with what purpose? So they will be my people and I will be their God, or their Elohim. That is also covenant language. Every time he says, you will be my people and I will be your Elohim, that is covenant language. And he says in verse 24, my servant David will be king over them, and all of them will have one shepherd. They will live by my rulings and keep and observe my regulations. Keep and observe. Those two verbs together, not one or the other. And when he says shepherd, shepherd was a title that was given to kings. Because the same way that a shepherd takes care of his flock, protects them, feeds them, provides for them, is always watching that the wolf doesn't come or any other predator and takes them away. That's the role of a king. In verse 25, he says, they will live in the land I gave to Yaakov, my servant, where your ancestors lived. They will live there. They, their children, and their grandchildren forever. Remember that for Elohim, for our Heavenly Father, family is priority, is important. It's not just about you. It's about you and your descendants. So anything that you do is going to affect your descendants. If you do it the way Yahweh wants, your descendants will be blessed. If you do it the way Yahweh doesn't want, all the curses of breaking covenant will fall upon you and your children and your children's children. People that don't have it's not their fault. So again, the Lord is big on family. Why do you think that we have so many divorced people, so many single moms, even single dads? Because the enemy doesn't want family. Why? Because the purpose of family is to preserve and continue the covenant, to bring forth life, to bless him, to honor him. So the enemy just tears up families left and right. And that's not only non-believers. It happens, I think, even worse within believers. Okay?
The enemy's after them even harder.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And maybe after seed.
See. And he says, they, their children, and their grandchildren forever. How long is forever?
Forever.
And David, my servant, will be their leader forever. I will make a covenant of peace, a covenant of shalom with them, an everlasting covenant. I will give to them, increase their numbers, and set my sanctuary among them forever. What is a sanctuary?
Temple.
Temple. So when people say there's no temple,
Yes, again.
the importance of the temple It represents Yahweh, his covenant, his people, his presence in the midst of his people. That has been his whole heart from the moment he created the heavens and the earth and he placed Adam and Eve in the garden. To be with them. To be with them. That is his whole purpose. So that is part of the covenant. That a covenant of peace. What does shalom mean?
Peace.
No.
Completion.
Wholeness.
You should know that by now. I've said that a gazillion times.
Emptiness, wholeness, lacking nothing.
Shalom.
Nothing
You
missing,
have
nothing lacking.
peace.
No restriction.
You have peace when nothing is missing,
Nothing is lacking.
nothing is broken. By nothing, he means nothing. You lack absolutely nothing. You don't lack in your finances. You don't lack in your health. You don't lack in your marriage. You don't lack in your jobs. You don't lack anywhere in your clothing, in your food, and your provisions, and anything. You don't lack anything. Only then are you in complete peace. Nothing's troubling you. I don't have to think about all the bills I have to pay. Will I make it this month? That is true. So he's telling you, I'm making a covenant of shalom with you. You will lack absolutely nothing.
And
Psalm 23.
Enemy will be driven back and you will rest in peace.
Exactly. No one's gonna come and take away what he has given you. No one's gonna upset you. No one's gonna. Can you imagine living like that?
That's peace.
That's true peace. Nothing. And only him can do that. And he's saying, to who else did he promise a covenant of peace?
Yes.
Pinchas. Pinchas. Phineas. Why did he promise Pinchas a covenant of shalom?
Because he descended God's honor.
Because he defended Yahweh's honor.
Was zealous about
And he was zealous for taking care of the honor of Yahweh. So that's what shalom means. So that paragraph 23 is I mean, it's amazing. It says, verse 28. No, verse 27. My home will be with them. Let me go back to verse 26. I will make a covenant of shalom with them, an everlasting covenant. How long is it going to last? Forever. I will give to them, increase their numbers, and set my sanctuary among them forever, which is in verse 27. My home will be with them. I will be their Elohim, and they will be my people. Again, covenant language. His home is his tabernacle, his temple. Verse 28, the nations will know that I am Adonai, who sets Israel apart as holy when what? My sanctuary is with them forever. Remember, this is Ezekiel. This is talking about, well, for them during this time, remember they're in Babylon. The temple's gone, and so their desire is to restore that temple, which for them would be the second temple. The second temple was destroyed in 70 CE, Common Era. And so they're still expecting another temple, the third temple, millennial temple, the temple according to Ezekiel. Why? Because they believe this prophecy will be fulfilled again. And so for all those people that are against the third temple, what they're doing in Israel, the Institute of the Temple, what you're doing is going completely against what Yahweh has spoken. You're going against his words. You're going against his covenant. You're going against, he's promised you a covenant of shalom. He's promising you to be his people and him, your God. It's covenant language. So basically, and I've said this before, you're committing what's called ma'at. You're committing ma'at. I mean ma'al, I'm sorry, ma'al. Ma'al.
Ma'at is a goddess, right?
Trees and
No, Ma'al means
Ma'at.
justice and righteousness. There is a goddess named Ma'at, but Ma'at per se means righteousness and justice. So when you commit Ma'at, you're basically telling God, blow it, I don't care.
trees and treachery.
So you're committing Ma'at, and that's legal terminology. Therefore, he has the right to come against you legally, a legal lawsuit. And I don't want to be there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? So that's the end of chapter 37. Any questions about what we just read? I mean, it's deep. I mean, if you take those words and go over them and over them and try to digest them, it's heavy, very heavy. Questions?
What's the name of the book?
This one is Zondervan. Illustrated Bible Background Commentary. There's a set for the Old Testament and there's a set for the New Testament.
No, you got the one without pictures.
Yeah.
The New Testament has, I think, 5 volumes and this one has 4. It's excellent, and like I said, what I like is very similar to IVP because it's this kind of one of the authors, the same one,
Oh, wow.
but it has pictures. I'm a picture person.
Cool.
So it gives you a better, when you're reading about it, it gives you a better understanding of what you're looking at.
How
One
much
of
are
the-
they running?
Huh?
How much are they running?
If you buy them individually, they can run anywhere from 20, 25, 30. You can buy, the New Testament said I bought them used, and they're basically brand new, so they were cheaper.
Wow.
And so one of the things I want to, this is the concept of cosmology. We'll be going over that eventually. This is their concept of creation, the way they saw creation, and this was known in all the ancient Near East. But I'll tell you about it. I'll tell you about it. It's fascinating. So like I said, it's just the pictures help. So this is a very good resource. And again, you can get them, if you buy them used, you save a whole bunch of money. Okay, any questions? You know it all?
Right.
Good. Okay, now I want to go over a few things about the temple. So let's start with chapter 40.
Which one? I'm sorry.
Ezekiel 40, chapter 40. It says, in the 25th year of our exile. So that means, how many more years they got to go? If this is year 25.
16, 50, 45.
It said this
But
is
what was the
what's
question
He's speaking and says, this is in the 25th year of our exile. They're in Babylon. How long were they in Babylon?
40.
70 years.
70. So minus 25.
45.
So they
Yeah,
got
'cause
45 more years to go.
Right.
So he says, in the 25th year of our exile, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th day of the month. What is the beginning of the year?
Nisan.
Nisan, Aviv. This was the 14th year after the city of Jerusalem was struck. It was on that very day that the hand of Adonai was on me, and he took me there. So what he's saying, they've been in exile for 25 years, but the destruction of Jerusalem has been only 14 years since the city was destroyed. Remember, they were taken in phases. There were 3 groups that went to Babylon in 3 different phases. And in the last phase, Jerusalem was destroyed. So he's saying in the 14th year after the city of Jerusalem was struck or destroyed, it was on that very day that the hand of Yahweh was on me, and he took me there. So where did he take Ezekiel?
To Jerusalem.
To Jerusalem.
In the spirit.
Most likely in the spirit. And it says in verse 2, in visions, Elohim brought me into the land of Israel and put me down on a very high mountain. What mountain is that?
Zion.
Mount Zion. On it, toward the south, it seemed that a city was being built. That is where he took me, and there in front of me was a man whose appearance was like bronze. He had a flax cord and a measuring rod in his hand, and he stood in the gateway. The man said to me, human being, or son of man, look with your eyes, hear with your ears, and pay attention to all the things I am showing you, because the reason you were brought here is so that I could show them to you. Tell everything you see to the house of Israel. So basically, he's doing what he did with Moses. When Moses went up to the mountain, what mountain was it?
Sinai.
Sinai. What did the Lord show him on Mount Sinai?
A tabernacle. Heavenly tabernacle.
The heavenly tabernacle. So he's doing the same thing with Ezekiel. He took them to, remember Jerusalem is destroyed, but he's bringing him in visions, in the spirit, to that place. He's on the Mount Zion, and there's a building going on. They're building something. And he says this man that has a measuring cord. And he says you're to hear with your ears and look with your eyes and pay attention to what I'm showing you. Why? Because you're going to tell about this to the whole house of Israel. Verse 5. There was a wall surrounding the house. What is another term for the house?
Temple.
Temple. The man had in his hand a measuring rod, 6 cubits long, and each cubit being a normal cubit plus a handbreadth. Basically, they're saying that 6 cubits is 10.5 feet. 1 cubit is 21 inches, and a normal cubit 18 inches, and a handbreadth 3 inches. So he goes. He's in verse 6. He says, he measured the wall's width at 10.5 feet and its height at 10.5 feet. He went to the east gate. Why the east gate?
There's come Yeshua, come from.
Why the east gate?
Eden.
That's where Israel's at.
Well, for us, they're east, but he's in Israel.
Eden.
Why the east gate? What's the thing about the east? The entrance through the east.
Because Adam
That's-
and Eve sent
No.
towards the east.
Go back. Listen to the context of what he's showing Ezekiel. What is he trying to show Ezekiel?
Temple.
The temple. Which way you enter the temple?
To the
East.
Through the
gate.
east.
Is that the one where Yeshua's going to come down on the Mount of Olives, going to split it, and it's going to open up the eastern gate?
Yes. Because you enter to the east. The king enters through the east. That's the entrance to the temple. No matter where they're at, it has to be through the east.
So the tabernacle.
The tabernacle. He said he went to the east gate, climbed its steps, and measured one of the gate's doorposts at 10.5. It's going to give you a whole bunch of measurements. Verse 7, there were guard rooms, measuring so-and-so. The distance between the guard room, so-and-so. The threshold of the gate adjoining the gate's entranceway facing the house measured so-and-so. Again, all these measurements mean something, but all these numbers, trust me, they mean something. The thing is that the Lord is detailed down to the last centimeter, whatever, inches. And it has to be exact.
See, in mine, everything says 10 feet by 10 feet by 10 feet.
Yeah, there's going to be variation in the
Yeah.
translations, but for the most part, it's going to be around that measurement.
Cubits.
In terms of cubit, depends how you define a cubit. Again, because they used to use, but I mean, if you have someone like Danny, I'm sure his arm is longer than mine, so his cubits are going to be larger than mine. But eventually they came and they standardized that. So they're going to see some variations in translations depending from where they get their measurements. So he's giving them all these measurements, and he's talking about guard rooms, and he's talking about the threshold of the gate, and telling all the things that were around that, around the rooms and the temple. In verse 17, it says, then he brought me into the outer courtyard. There I saw rooms and paved mosaic flooring made for the courtyard all around its perimeter, and 30 rooms facing the flooring. And it gives you another set of measurements. Let me see where it is that it says. So he goes all around the city. I think I have. So when Yeshua said, in my Father's house there are many rooms, what he's saying is the temple is a temple complex. It's not only the sanctuary per se, which is the holy place and the holy of holies, plus the court where they had the altar. That per se is the sanctuary. But around the sanctuary, there were other rooms and other things because there were a lot of stuff going on. There was a place to make the bread. There was a place where they cooked the meat. There was a place
for the oil,
for the oil, for the incense, a place for the garments, a place for where they slept,
Take a mikvah.
places for mikvah, places where they brought the lepers that were going to be cleansed, a place. I mean, this was a whole complex. This was huge. Places where they had their animals stored, places where they had, as a matter of fact, they even had rulings on the knives they used for slaughtering the animals. after being used, after a while, these knives become, you can't use them anymore.
No.
They even had rulings on what to do with these knives. Did you resell them? Did you refurbish them? Did you use them again? Because if it had a little nick, you couldn't use those knives, because remember that the cut had to be one straight cut. Why? To avoid that animal suffering. So you just couldn't go in and grab any kind of knife and have all these. It had to be a clean cut, and it had to be fast and clean without causing any harm or any pain to the animal. So even those things they have rulings in that. If you read the Mishnah, they have a whole bunch of instructions on what you do with those knives. So they had rooms for all these things. And I want to read, I think it's in chapter 43. So basically chapter 41 and 42, he's giving all the instructions of all the parts and places and pieces that had to be in the temple. Chapter 43 of Ezekiel, it says, after this, he brought me to the gate facing east. Again, why east? Because that's the way the entrance to the temple, where the king went through. And it says, there I saw the glory of Elohim of Israel approaching from the east. So Yahweh, the only way he enters the temple is through the east. The same way when Yeshua comes back, he enters through the east. And he says, his voice was like the sound of rushing water, and the earth shone with his glory. Remember the glory, another translation is Shekinah. Another translation is his honor. Verse 3, the vision seemed like the vision I had seen when I came to destroy the city. Also the visions were like the vision I had seen by the Kevar River, and I fell on my face. Why did he fall on his face?
Reverence.
The glory. I mean, I don't think anyone can maintain standing while the glory of the Lord is passing by. And he says, Adonai's glory entered the house through the gate facing east. That's the only entrance into the house. The east. Verse 5, next a spirit took me up and brought me into the inner courtyard, and I saw Adonai's glory fill the house. What house? What's the temple? I heard someone speaking to me from the house, the temple, and a man was standing by me. He said, human being, this is the place for my throne, the place for the soles of my feet, where I will live among the people of Israel for 2 days. Forever. Forever. The house of Israel, both they and their kings, will never again defile my holy name by their prostitution, by burying the corpse of their kings on their high places, or by placing their threshold next to my threshold and their door frames next to my door frames, with only a common wall between me and them. What he's talking about, if you read all of Ezekiel, when he's seeing some of the visions that the Lord shows him of what was going on with the people in the temple that they had, within the temple, rooms to serve other gods. They had images and statues, and they did sorcery, and they did a whole bunch of stuff within the temple of Yahweh to pagan gods. So he's saying, you put their threshold, you put their walls, you put their frames right within my house. It's like if somebody came to your house, Vicky, and
Started putting up
started putting up their stuff, and it's,
Brought a pork roast.
So he says, again, yes, they defiled my holy name by the disgusting practices they committed, which is why I destroy them in my anger. So now they should put their prostitution at a distance and the corpse of their kings far away from me. Then I will live among them forever. Verse 10, you human being, describe this house. What house? The temple. Describe this house to the house of Israel so so that they will be ashamed of their crimes. In other words, by seeing the temple, they should repent, they should recognize their shame for going against Yahweh. And says, and let them measure accurately. If they become ashamed of all they have done, show them the elevation and plan of the house. In other words, the blueprint. In other words, if the people of Israel feel ashamed and repent because of what they did to Yahweh, then Yahweh says, then show them the blueprint of my house. Only if they're ashamed. Show them everything about my house. And he says, the elevation, the blueprint, its exits and entrances, all its details and decorations and all its specifications, its design and its Torah. Its Torah is all the rulings, all the instructions that have to do with the temple. It says, sketch it for them to see so that they can observe the entire design with its specifications and carry them out. This is Torah for the house, Torah for the temple. The whole surrounding area on the mountaintop will be especially holy. This is Torah for the house.
What verse is that?
That was verse 12.
Okay.
So basically he's saying there's going to be the sanctuary itself, which consists of the outer court, the holy place, and then the Holy of Holies. This is the altar. Okay, this was supposed to be kind of like a square because it was 500 by 500 cubits. And you can't go 1 inch more or 1 inch less. It had to be exactly the same. And then around it, they were supposed to build other complex, more gates, and then more rooms. And there were supposed to be certain gates, but you always entered through the east. Because that's the way kings always entered into their temples. According to the pagan knowledge, all pagan gods entered to the temple, to the east. So Yahweh, Yeshua, everybody enters through the east. And so around this is the whole temple complex. So he's giving him all the instruction, and he's telling them, the people of Israel are to know this blueprint, are to know these measurements, are to know everything about my house inside out. How many gates, how many doors, how many rooms, for what is what.
Wow.
Do you think the people know anything about the temple?
You know, but the beauty is that it's the east entrance of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And since as long as I've been going to Israel, he never moved that side for me to pray to the east. Just, even if they say 2 meters north or south, it's always the east gate.
And you're aware that the Muslims have built tombs, a cemetery right in front of the eastern gate, because remember, if you're an Israeli and you're going towards their temple, you get defiled. So they think, a Messiah ain't going to come through there because he'll get defiled. Yeah, right.
Right through there.
That's why he's going to break it. He's going to split. Waters are going to come. What are the waters for? Purification, to wash. Oh, he's going to.
Yeah.
That's going to be a sight. That's going to be a sight, people. And all.
The people in the grave.
Oh, when they see him coming,
Oh.
woo, run.
Dios,
So-
there's our Messiah.
So they
The
think
Messiah.
because there's a cemetery there, the Messiah is not going to go through the eastern gate. That's because why? They know that's the way that the king enters the temple.
And they know what the scripture says about.
Yeah.
They know what the scripture says.
Yes, but this was known in the ancient Middle East that there was always one specific particular entrance for the king. No one entered. Huh?
How in the world does Israel even allow that for them to even put a cemetery?
Oh my love, they have done well. Remember that Israel have been under so many Muslim countries ruling, like the Turks and
Syrians.
and a whole bunch of other. Remember that it hasn't been till 1948 that Israel has been its own nation.
And they know they can make a bridge, you know.
Oh, well, he'll just go like that and get there.
Take everything to the side.
So what I'm saying is that they understand, they understand what's going on. So the important about the temple, especially that verse, I need you guys to go over and over and over verses 10 through 12 of Ezekiel 43, because that is a commandment. We're commanded to know the temple inside out. Its measurements, its rooms, how it's going to be placed, how you enter, who enters where, who comes out, everything. It says that's a Torah. It's a Torah of the temple. An instruction. We have to know the blueprint completely. Why? Because that's the house of our King. And not only do you need to know that, later on we're going to see that you need to know the protocol to approach the King. Once you know everything about the temple, you need to know how you enter, how you bow, how you approach him. It's not like, oh, yo, man, here I am. No, there's a way. So it's important that we understand this. That's why what to wear.
Yeah.
That's it. That's why I want to focus this Torah cycle, focus it with the temple, so we can see that aspect, that perspective that most of us don't know. Because I think it's going to enrich your life, understanding of what is Kedusha, holiness, how we approach the King, what everything within the temple means, all the particulars of it, because we're commanded to know that. That's why the Temple Institute in Israel has done what it has done, because they understood that it's a commandment that they need to know this. As a matter of fact, when you look this up in the Hebrew, it kind of hints to that a model had to be built before they built the real thing. And that's why in Jerusalem there is a model, the Temple Institute has a model of the temple. And it's fulfilling prophecy. If you're keeping up with what's going on in the Temple Institute, you will recognize that they are going through all the garments, through all the furnishings, all the utensils. They've been practicing when there's been a feast.
They're going to trade the Levites. They've never been in hospitals or close to the dead person. And they have many of them already, young men.
Yeah. And that's why that genetic marker, that DNA test has been devised so they can know who is a Levite, who is a priest. It's not just anybody, because that was what's going on when Yeshua was here. The temple was so corrupt that anybody could be a priest. You just paid the right amount of money and you became the high priest.
That's where that being a Cohen or whatever, where that comes in.
What?
If you're a Cohen.
Yeah, Cohen.
Okay.
And some people that have the name, last name Cohen, you can bet they're Cohens.
Oh, yeah.
They're Kohanim. So,
Yeah.
and there's variations of Cohen. So, but anything similar to Cohen, remember, because they had to change their last names so they wouldn't be known to be Jews. So some names like Connor or, certain
We have in India Khan and Levi.
Khan.
Levi.
Yeah, so those names are related. So, but they can confirm that through this genetic testing called, as a matter of fact, they call it the Kohanim gene. Genetically, they can tell who is a Cohen, who is not. Why? Because when Yahweh told
Aaron?
Aaron, I was going to say Arnold. I was like, Arnold's not Aaron. When he told Aaron that it was him and his descendants, they only were going to be Cohens forever, and he knew we were going to be in 21st century. How can I tell after we've been dispersed all over the nations who's who? Well, he put a little genetic marker only on the Kohanim, descendants of Aaron, that you can find it genetically.
Wow.
Coincidence? I don't think so.
No.
He did it on purpose. So only them have this particular genetic marker. So that's how they know who's who. And they can serve in the temple. Okay? It's awesome. I mean, he's awesome.
Phenomenal.
Okay, so any questions up to now? I need you guys to finish reading Ezekiel, finish the book of Ezekiel. Well, the rest of it is all about the temple. And try to find other resources about the temple. I'll be bringing some when we go through the cosmology and the temple texts and all these things, so you can see there's a lot of, and I don't think it's a coincidence that right now there's like this interest in the temple. For example, Rico Cortez is excellent in teachings about the temple. There's another man whom they consult, the Israelis. The Temple Institute consult him, and he's a guy from Texas,
He's archaeologist.
Joseph Good. If you go to his website called Hatikva Ministries, he has all of his teachings on the temple there. Also, Rico Cortez, if you go to his website, Wisdom and Torah, also has a lot of teachings on the temple. Another person that's been also studying temple for many years, and now the Lord has opened ways for her to teach, is Dr. Dina Dye.
Yeah.
In some places she's Diane,
Yeah.
but she's changed to Dina because it's a Hebrew name.
DYE.
Yes. Foundations, yes, DYE, Dye. Dina, Foundations in Torah is her website. She also has excellent. As a matter of fact, she just wrote a book. Diane has it. I have one. It's an excellent book.
It's deep, but it's good.
Yeah.
Did you mention they're not supposed to build that temple? Is that what you said
No.
before? Or is it okay for them to do that?
They have to build it. It's not that if it's okay, they have to build it.
Okay.
According to this prophecy, they have to build it. It's a commandment to know the temple and to build it. So we have Wisdom and Torah is of Rico Cortez. Joseph Good is Hatikva Ministry. And then Dr. Dina Dye is Foundations in Torah. All three of them are excellent teachers and have excellent videos. And I'll probably show some of her videos when we go through some of the temple text. And also in Wisdom and Torah, Daniel McGurr is the one that does McGurr. I think it's McGurr. No, McGurr.
I think it's GIRR.
I don't know, it's something like that.
I-R-E McGuire.
Daniel McGurr. If you look him up in Wisdom and Torah, it's he's the one that starts on cosmology. Which those are the videos that I plan to show you, so you can have an understanding, and that way we'll discuss them. So I mean, there's excellent stuff out there. These are excellent teachers. They're not wacky or kooky or fooky,
Monkey.
or funky. They're real. They really love the Lord. They serve Him. They're Torah based completely. And they make use of other resources that are available out there to understand the context. Because when we take the word out of context, we make up stuff that's not real. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So please finish the book of Ezekiel, and that will help us so when we go over the temple text for the new Torah cycle. Okay? Thank you.